Welcome to a Supercoach Hub NBL podcast. I'll be your host today, Vern's, joined by DVG and Supercoach Boys. How we doing, fellas? Start with you, DVG.
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Nice to see that smiling face of yours, Vern's. Like the last time you and I were on a podcast, you had different coloured hair, mate. What happened? Did you lose a bet or?
Everyone keeps asking me that. It's by choice, fellas.
It's a fashion statement,
Oh,
right?
I was orange for a period of time for reasons, but I don't mind it when it hits the blonde. What about you, Buzz? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks, fellas. I'm super keen to join the pod for this season. Obviously, my first pod for the Supercoach Hub. So, yeah, keen to get stuck in.
Yeah, awesome. Well, look, let's just go quickly over how we went each last season, sort of thing. Me personally had a good run. I finished off 23rd, I think it was, which was very nice. David, yourself, how did you go?
Look, I was lucky enough to take out the title last year. Obviously, yeah, incredible journey. Loved everything about it, and yeah, look, I to be honest, like you still it's one of those things you still got to pinch yourself, right, and ask yourself whether or not it actually does it for all of us that play fantasy sports and Supercoach. This obviously is a unique thing, right? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Or there's only one sort of champion each year for the respective codes. So, absolute thrill. I've loved everything. Everything that's happened sort of since. It's been great, and it's going to no doubt be impossible to defend the crown. But looking forward to doing my best to be part of the NBL Supercoach community this year and playing an active role. And what I really hope out of this year is that we can all, play a part in helping to grow this particular code on the Supercoach platform, so that we can get some of the numbers up that we see in the other three codes.
Yeah, and I'd definitely love to see an increase in numbers. Obviously, 22 last year we started and maybe 25K we finished with. Would love to see that crack the 40K mark. That would be awesome. Obviously, the more people that are in it, the more competitive it's going to be, sort of thing. But I think that's what we live for. We love it. We want people part of this game because we want them to know that David's the best. Boz, how did you go last season?
Yeah, so last season had a really good showing. Finished 7th overall, so not quite as good as Dave over there, but yeah, super proud of myself. I mean, the first time I've ever kind of cracked the top 10 in any of the fantasy sports. I think my best ever is AFL around the 1,000 mark. So, I guess you could compare 1,000 in AFL to a 7 in NBL, but yeah, super keen to be able to kind of crack that top 10.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're in a stacked room tonight. I mean, not too many podcasts I end up being the bottom dog in it all. So you guys are going to have to hype me up. I'm going to have to hype you up all day, fellas. But just for anyone that is tuning into the podcast, we do appreciate if you do like and subscribe to the channel for your consistent injections of Supercoach content directly into your YouTube feed. We also have a Discord. It will be in the link below. So jump in, join the Supercoach Hub Discord. A lot of chat in there. I see Jai talking there all the time, Supercoach Pleb. I'm sure he's excited to eventually get in on the podcast when he can. And also for those that haven't, but we do have a charity lifeline fundraiser event that is going on, $25 entry. So for anyone that's interested in that and just wants to be a part of it, awesome to jump on in. If not, we understand. It's understandable. I mean, if you want to, then it's fine. If not, all good. So yes, we'll start off with a little bit of talk about the Blitz. We've only had a few games so far. Maybe I'm preemptively jumping that. I mean, we can talk about the Blitz and the games before that if we have seen any games, I guess, preseason games. So let's. I guess it's easier though to jump into the Blitz games, but let's start off preseason games. Did anyone see like the preseason games at all, or follow any of that?
Look, I mean, I think like any of us, I definitely paid attention to whatever stats was coming out of those. Look, to be honest, the actual footage itself from a lot of those games was streams were pretty interesting. Sometimes the ball was at the other end of the court and the camera was still at the other end in a few of those sort of streams. And I know that they were struggling with the streams of the Perth games that were overseas. But look, paid attention to some of the ones that came here. Obviously, the Phoenix game, the Phoenix United game that went into extra time. That was a cracking game, like for a preseason game. Yeah. That was an absolute cracking game. I'm just trying to see the score. Yeah, so United took that one out, 121 to 120. So yeah, that was a cracking game. But look, it's Look, I like anyone. I think it'd be really hard to actually watch some of these based on the streams, but yeah, definitely paid attention to the stats that were coming out of it.
Yeah, yep. And Boz, what about you? You seen any of these?
Yeah, no, pretty much the same as DVG. No real chance to kind of watch these games due to personal life things, work, etc. But I think what you're looking and trying to get out of that is, seeing players playing healthy, seeing players put up numbers that you expect them to put up. So I think the big one for me was Kendrick Davis from Adelaide. So in that first kind of outing against Brisbane, putting up a very nice Supercoach score. I think it was, if I look at my stats here, 47 Supercoach. Yeah, did a whole lot. So did, come from the G League with the high assist numbers, got those, scored the ball quite easily, and then pitched in with some steals. So look, yeah, didn't watch it, but I was very keen on seeing some stats from some players.
Yeah. I think the crazy thing with the preseason games is how many games we saw of Brisbane, which is a little unfortunate because we know how bad their fixture is, and it's like Tyrell Harrison looks so good.
Oh, he looks so dominant, doesn't he?
Yeah, he
so
looks
dominant.
Insane. Oh, so we got to see a lot of Brisbane, but it's unfortunate they're not really Supercoach relevant.
No.
I mean, that's mainly speaking about the premiums. I think with the rookies, you can accept a poor fixture if they're going to make bank, aka Rocco, who was quite good in these games as well. Definitely elevated minutes, I feel, that what we're seeing in the preseason. I think Harris will get an extra 5, 3 to 5 at minimum in the real season, and that's going to bump Rocco scoring down a little bit. I think still very unders for what he's priced at. So he's a big talking point, I think, for a lot of people looking at him for that bench center position. Which, yeah, that's awesome.
Look, I think that, and like, we'll obviously talk about it later when we're talking about, tips for how to structure your side. But like, I think that bench spot at the center, that he is almost a no-brainer, Rocco, to take that. And it's because the fact that we know how young he we know how young he was last year. We know he's still young, but this is his go year. Like, this is the year that his second year as an NBL. Next, they've got every intention of going for the draft after this. So I think that the Bullets, organization will be aware of that, together with his family and him and all that sort of stuff. They will want to increase his minutes. Like, his minutes last year, were they around about the 8 to 9 minute mark last year?
Yeah, right? Wasn't quite cracking 10.
Hold on, so we just go. Sorry, guys, I should have this up. We're just having a quick see. So his minutes per game last year, they were actually lower though. That was 7 minutes a game he averaged across the 27 games, and I just can't see in any sort of world, especially with some of the cattle that Brisbane sort of let go of. Like, Harrison's there. Harrison, we know, is going to take the lion's share, but surely in a year that's so significant to him being front and center for the NFL draft, that they'll bump those minutes up to 12 or 13. And if he can get 12 to 13 minutes and like that, a 5-minute bump, he's going to make really good coin for us with what he can do. So I think he's an absolute no-brainer at the bench spot, even with the bad draw.
Yep. And I think I agree with you there as well. Just like, his output's definitely going to be insane. And for what we saw, whatever minutes Tyrell isn't playing, he's playing. Like, it's a like-for-like switch. They're not playing small ball. He's coming on every time. And that could also speak huge volumes for Tyrell gets into foul trouble early, boom, you end up with a Rocco 20-minute game and you get massive evidence off that. So something you got to keep in the back of your mind. What about you, Boz? How you feeling?
Yeah, look, I do like Rocco Zikarsky. I mean, tip to go top 10 in the NBA draft, an Australian player. I feel like we need another young star coming through in terms for Australian basketball. You know, there's always talk every year if Dyson Daniels comes through. You know, we had Ben Simmons a long time ago. But I think we need that next face, and I think it's in the NBL's best interest, not just Brisbane Bullets, to bump Rocco's minutes up and really get him into that top 10 for not only the NBA draft next year, but also, you know, for the fans of Brisbane, jersey sales, things like that. It starts to kind of, we really got to hype these guys up because they're going to be our next Olympians. I know it's kind of not Supercoach related, but we're talking about Australian basketball in general. If we can really pump up, you know, Johnny Furphy, who just got drafted this year to Indiana in the NBA, and now Rocco Zikarsky is looking like he'll go somewhere. It's just going to do wonders for not only the Supercoach game this year, but just Australian basketball in general.
Yeah.
So and I can see him,
Yeah, even though you said not Supercoach relevant, it is because increased minutes is increased production, and that's going to be Supercoach relevant. The only scary thing I find with running Rocco at the center is if your center on field, if they're a center only, they're going to be somebody that maybe has to go in and out of your team. I personally am very interested in Marcus Lee, and it's one of those things that because Rocco has so many singles, that means that when Lee hits a single, I don't have any coverage. You know, it's either trade Lee or take a single on field. So that's the only problem. I'm sort of falling into that. And I don't know if that's pushing me away from Lee because I was pretty happy with Lee preseason. To be fair, hasn't shown too much yet. Didn't show too much in that SEM game, and they don't look like the strongest inside team either. But he was
No, they don't.
No, they look very
I noticed
weak
that too. They look very weak.
Yeah, and at all, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's true. They don't look good. But he was coming off the bench in that game, and yeah, I think it'll be a different mojo when it hits the season. Saying that Rob Lowe in the game he had recently, he looked insane as well. And then I'm sitting here thinking, is Lowe actually going to be the guy instead? Like, he's getting the minutes right now. I don't think it'll transition to the actual season, but he's roughly around the same price, and he does have, I believe, forward eligibility, so it at least allows me to cover in a situation where it's like, hey, Melbourne have a double, swing him forward, put him on the bench, get a center in that actually has a double. So that's the only problem I'm finding with Rocco at the moment, but I'm sure we'll figure that out as we go ahead. Sorry, got a little bit sidetracked then. I guess other teams that are Supercoach relevant that have played a few games, we've seen a bit of SEM and we've seen a bit of Melbourne. We did just mention SEM before, so let's jump to them. Is anyone standing out in SEM to you right now? Boz, you start us off this time.
Look, I went into the preseason pretty high on Derek Walton Jr. So obviously decent pedigree when he played in the NBL in previous seasons. And, you know, the first couple of games, he actually didn't do too great. Minutes were down, but I think that was just obviously him being kind of eased into his start to Southeast Melbourne. But there's also that fact of Nathan Sobey. So I'm sure we saw what Sobey did with Brisbane last year and, you know, pretty ball dominant kind of guard. And I think we are kind of fearing now that, you know, Derek Walton has such a high ceiling, but does Sobey need to feast? Does he require the ball in his hands to be effective? So, look, I was actually quite happy with how Derek Walton played the other night in the Blitz. So that gave me a little bit of hope that he still has the potential to obviously put out some big scores. But at his pretty high price range, I'm kind of a little bit scared now to jump on, just in case there's a slow start to the season.
Yep. No, completely understandable. I think that's a fear with a lot of these higher priced guys. You know, it's so hard to make money. We don't want to start off losing it. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, look, out of all of them, like Derek Walton, because he accumulates points in a whole sort of different bunch of ways, and that's exactly what you want in Supercoach. You just don't want someone who just scores points. You want someone that does those assists that are worth 2 points each. You know, you want them to accumulate steals and, you know, blocks and all that sort of stuff. So he was definitely one based on the pedigree, and he definitely has actually shown that, even though he hasn't played good minutes. He's definitely showed that across his time there. That price point of 356, is that right, Boz? 357.
Yeah, 357
is pretty high, so it's scary. Look, there is a piece from from the Phoenix that I've liked, and look, I over the weekend I actually had my first team reveal for the News Corp publications, and I actually, and I'm getting slammed about it too, but I actually picked Hunter as my starting centre there. Obviously, SEM have that double in round 2. Look, I just felt that he was a guy that there, especially because I saw how poor they were, in that interior. Like, he's going to have to play a role on that, because to me, there doesn't actually look like there's going to be someone that is going to actually necessarily be able to do that. So I think that he's actually going to have to play more minutes than, say, what he used to at the King in the Kings outfit. And he did actually have a couple of fairly solid in those preseason hitouts in a small amount of time. I think he had a pretty solid hit out. Like in that United preseason game, the one that went into extra time, he only played 17 minutes in that game, and he scored 26 Supercoach points. In short amount of time. The thing that I liked about what happened in the game against Illawarra, he didn't score as well, but he played 24 minutes in that game. Now, last year he was only averaging, I think, 20 to 21 for the Kings. So the fact that in a preseason game where they definitely started pulling people, the fact that he played that 24 minutes, I thought was really good. He got 8 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and a block. It wasn't this incredible ceiling, but it just was, I guess, a piece that was a little bit different to the Marcus Lee piece. A piece that's going to have a double in the round 2, and it's someone then that I can flip to someone else, once that round 3 hits. So I've got him there for the time being. Whether or not some stuff comes out of these blitz games over the next few days, it's going to change my mind. But he was someone I was definitely interested in from them.
Yeah. No, it's great insight on a different take. Definitely not one I've considered myself, but I do see. I mean, obviously Williams has left a big hole. Creek has left a big hole. They need people to be scoring Supercoach points, let alone actual points. Yes, they recruited Sobey to do that, but there's a big hole in that front court for them. So that, I mean, he has to do something, you would think, with those minutes. And the only thing I think a problem there is he was good last year. It's hard to say Sydney were a winning team because they were a bit 50-50.
They weren't a winning team. Like, it was they were an awful team. But he still played a pretty vital role, but only played that 20 minutes. But they had other people that could have really assisted him in that interior. Whereas this team, I just look at this SEM team. I just don't know whether or not they do have it all there to do that. But it's just one thing that we always want to chase in Supercoach, right, is ceiling. Like, that's something that we want to remain competitive. We want to chase ceiling. Now, I'm not stupid. Like, I understand he probably doesn't have this ceiling, but at that price point of 256, I think that he will actually probably play more minutes than Marcus Lee in the United thing. And I just think that his all-round game is a little bit more there. So that was where I was coming from. Again, a lot's going to change in the next. When do we kick off? 9 days, 23 hours, and 46 minutes. We kick off. A lot's going to change in all of our teams with that, and I may make changes, but it was just something I looked at, and again, I really like. A lot of my success last year was attributed to making pod moves, and he is only owned by like 3.7% of the comp. So, yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, it's not a long-term hold. You're not sitting there expecting to have him for
No.
a long period of time. It's a potentially quick 2 weeks, maybe see how he's going from there, and probably gone. But the play that stood out to me from Sem that I was generally interested was Glover. I do think a lot of people are pretty high on him. He's quite cheap. It looks like he's going to be getting the minutes that he was not getting at Sydney. And he does more than just shoot. Like, he's definitely known for a guy that drains threes, like shoots them hella well when he's on. But he's very active in defense. He wants rebounds, and I feel like he still spreads his stats. Like, and it's not a huge number of spread, but it's enough. And I do think at his price of what he just needs to get 9 to match his price, I definitely don't think we're losing out there. I think at minimum he's playing to his price tag, and then potentially above. I guess my only fear factor is I don't want too many guys that have like a round 2 double and then a poor fixture, and I have to just get rid of too many on that week, because you want to be able to adjust. I mean, things may not go as planned. So yeah, Glover's definitely someone I was interested in. But we'll pivot to the next team here we're going to go over was just Melbourne. So they've played 3 games now. Obviously the hottest team when it comes to Supercoach. They've got an elite fixture. We want to be on them early because, well, they're just going to carry us for most of the season. You can build a team around them and then focus on the other components because they're going to have rotating, I guess, double game weeks. So you can build a team around Melbourne and feel pretty safe, I feel. David, Melbourne, who's standing out for you?
It's funny you were potting him earlier, Rob Lowe. You were potting him. Like it's look, I tell you what, people are like, you know what? He's been around a long time. He's not going to he's not going to get the minutes and all that sort of stuff. The problem is it's literally in that center position, it's going to be him and Lee sharing that position. That's the long and short of it. Now, a couple of things strike me about that particular thing is that we saw last year in the United rotations that both of their centers last year they did really well in that team system. They scored really well, super coach wise. They were really relevant. The other thing about Lowe compared to Lee, right, as a Melbourne piece is that A, he's 30,000 cheaper. B, his DPP status, as you were saying before, centre and forward. And I don't know if you guys know, like I should have written these down, but he's come off an absolutely insane season in the New Zealand NBL. Like his stats were through the roof. Now I know that's a different competition. I know Aldrich, has come out and been the MVP. I get it; it's a different competition, but it's a more competitive competition that it's been in recent years. And like you can only do what you can do on the court, and he's he's put up some absolute crazy numbers. He was like a walking double over there, and if that was to translate, like we've already seen, he's putting up. I know United may be just using the preseason games to give him more run, but if they're going to give him 15 to 20 minutes at that price point early on with this fixture with that DPP status, having that flexibility, if you want to have someone in that center, to switch in and out of with a United player in and out of those doubles, I actually think that it's a really good cheap piece to start the season with.
Yeah. As I said, someone I was eyeing off earlier too went nuts against Cairns in the Blitz game as well, and we saw it last year too. Sometimes Lee just gets 3 stupid fouls 5 minutes into a game, and then you got to play the other center. Magne got massive minutes when that would happen, and I wouldn't be surprised once again. Lee does it. Lowe gets massive minutes and then gives huge dividends for a very cheap price tag. Buzz, who stood out for you?
Well, in terms of Melbourne, I mean, Jack White's a pretty obvious lock in my opinion in terms of his pedigree and, playing some NBA, mostly G League and coming back to Melbourne United and looking to be a pretty big focal point to their team in the front court. I don't really see anyone taking his minutes at the 4 spot. I mean, you do have, Tanner Krebs, Kyle Bowen. I mean, these are names that, potentially you've never heard of, some people who are playing the game for the first time. So look, in terms of what they offer to Melbourne, those boys, they're solid players, solid role players, but, to have your best players on the court the majority of the game, I definitely see Jack White soaking up most of the minutes at the 4, and he's going to produce really, really well. So I think at the moment, especially that game against Cairns, he produced at a point per minute. So he played 26 minutes, put up 7 Supercoach points. So probably not going to get that every single game, but it's pretty much a really safe pick in my opinion. I'm sure 60, 70% are going to obviously have him locked in their side by opening round, but I think it's someone you can't afford to get too fancy with and try to kind of, leave him out and pod somewhere to try and get a leg up. I think it's just a pick that everyone must make to pretty much start their season off pretty solidly.
Yeah, no, definitely agree there. He does feel like if he's not locked in your side, you're not paying attention. But I mean, the crazy thing with him too is we're not even getting him at that like import price. So we're getting that a little bit cheaper. Like if we were looking at a guy of his caliber, I would have thought you're getting him for 277, 24 points per game, but we're getting him that bit cheaper as well, which is so nice. And it helps, helps with you being able to afford the rest of the team. So that's just an added bonus. It's easier for him to make money. And he's kind of feels like the Luke Travers from last year, where it's just like, lock him in. He's going to make money. He's going to be insane through this run that they have. You can just put him on court nearly every week for like the first 7 weeks. Obviously, they have like two singles in that time, but for majority of it, he's just going to be a massive centerpiece going forward. Now, let's look at some guards from here. I think we did talk about the big men doing a lot of work for Melbourne, and I think that's because the guards love to throw them alleys. I know, like,
they do.
Yeah, they just love to put it up there. Even when they're not in position, they're like, you can jump right and just throw it up and wish for the best. Delhi loves to put it up there for him. He gets some of the best alley-oop dunks in the competition. And I think with Lee, it's going to look very, very good. Unfortunately, Lowe is not really that kind of guy, but White is. So you will see it from him as well. Sorry about that, guys. Illy has had a good start to the preseason. I think he's the guard that sticks out for me. And I think it's also because of that price tag. We have Delhi, who's like 350K or whatever he is, like 320 maybe. It might be over.
312, I think. 312, I think.
There we go. It's just so expensive. It's more expensive than, as I mentioned, these imports. Illy's down at about that 250 mark, like way cheaper, way more affordable, has to do a lot less to be worth the money that we're paying for him. And I think I'm a little scared with Delhi that we're going to lose money on him. He's taken a bit of a back step in these practice games, and I do wonder if that's their plan going forward. We've seen Clark playing at the 2, Illy at the 1, and Delhi's coming off the bench. I do wonder if that's the norm going forward for them, or if that's just something they're playing with in the preseason. Definitely still has the confidence to shoot, though. So, look, out of Clark and Delhi, Shea Illy and Delhi, I'd probably choose Illy. But I'm not like stoked with the pick. I'm not over the moon with the pick. It's a pick with a good schedule. That's sort of the way I'm looking at it. But yeah, let's maybe jump onto some of these blitz games that we have seen. So we did see Tasmania now play 2 blitz games. They had Brisbane earlier in the piece, and then they had Adelaide today. Tasmania's run isn't the worst. It's not the best. It's kind of the middle piece. It's okay. Anyone from Taz that's piqued your interest, guys? Let's start with Dave. Anyone there?
Look, I really, really wanted to start the year with Magne. I just coming off the Olympics and all that sort of stuff. I just wanted to put him in. I knew that they had the double in round 3. And I've been talking about it all preseason, but I tell you, what I've seen of him so far, I haven't liked. I haven't liked. And again, I haven't watched all the games, but I have watched all the replays, and I just, I don't know. You just, I don't know if it's because Tassie, I'm really missing that McVeigh factor. Magne just didn't seem to be popping like he just did. I don't know. Like maybe I'm just overthinking it, but at the 317,000, I went from going, he was definitely in my team, to going, okay, at 317, like a couple of those trial matches, like I think he only hit, 2 in a row. I think he might have hit 12 and 14 Supercoach points or something. Like they were low. Like I don't know exactly what they were, but they were really low. I don't know what he scored tonight. So he played 17 minutes tonight, 1 from 6 from the field. He had 7 rebounds, which is good, 2 assists and 5 points. So what is that? 5, that's 12. 12,
I think
16
or
16. Yeah, so
Any
that's
turnovers
16.
there, or?
There was no turnovers, no.
No turnovers. Okay.
No
Yeah,
turnovers.
I did
So it
actually
was 16,
watch that.
16 and 17.
Yeah, I did watch that game, and I'll be honest, wasn't impressed with him either. There was a few under the rings where Magne of last season, he would have slammed him. He would have just put them down hard, but I don't know. He just didn't look like he had the spring in his step. I don't know if he just wasn't interested, but it just didn't look good. I was thinking that exact same you, Dave. I was interested in him early, hadn't been impressed in that game right there that I watched against Adelaide. I was like, yeah, nah, he's done. Boz, what about you? Tasmania.
Well, I just want to touch on Magnay for a bit because I was really high on him as well. I really do enjoy the way he plays. To be honest, I didn't have him once last year, and it was actually something that made me very frustrated watching a lot of Tasmania games.
That would have been a nightmare.
I was literally cheering against him. Like, he'd come on the court and I just wouldn't want to see him anywhere near it. And then all of a sudden he gets 2 blocks, 3 rebounds and 4 points in about 2 minutes of game time. So definitely someone I was definitely targeting. But you're right. Super low minutes to start the preseason thus far. Now, I know they're off to a club championship, I think, in the next couple of days, I've read on Twitter. So they're playing somewhere in Asia, I believe, against other kind of clubs around in Singapore. There we go. Potentially Scott Roth's just kind of easing some blokes into it because, again, tonight Crawford barely played 18 minutes. Milton Doyle doesn't even look like he wants to be out there, to be honest. So, look, I think Tasmania is in an interesting position, right? You've won the championship. Where's the motivation at? Someone like Magnay, though, still has a chance to make it to the NBA. So was hoping that he'd come out and show a little bit more. So, yeah, a little bit cold on Magnay at the moment. Definitely someone I'll be keeping a keen eye on.
Yeah. Look,
I was just going to say that there is someone, and he's not going to be relevant because he won't think, but the young fella, Brody Nunn.
Yeah.
Holy man, a kicking ball. Like, he just exploded in that first game. Like, it was crazy. I had to, because when I was looking at the replay, I'm like, who the hell is this little kid that keeps getting all these shots in? Like, and he was doing it all, assists and everything. And he looked great. And I was sitting there going, how much is he? When I saw his 58,000, I'm like, oh, how good is this 58,000? But yeah, no, obviously McDonald wasn't even on the court, and obviously everyone else, played minutes. But one that I don't know much about that kid, but I tell you one to maybe keep an eye on because he looked great on the court. So even he looks like he's had a pretty good game, tonight as well. So
yeah, 21 minutes as well. So they're putting him out there.
Putting him out there, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing that people have to keep in mind too, especially those that are new to Supercoach. What we're seeing right now, it's not going to be what happens in the regular season. Crawford isn't going to play 18 minutes. You're not going to have Brody Nunn on the court for 21 minutes. It's not going to happen. Sean McDonald will come back. I mean, Crawford will probably play close to that high 20 minutes, and then Sean McDonald will cover. And maybe in blowout games, you'll see Nunn for 2-3 minutes here and there. But unlike other Supercoach formats, we don't want someone in the team just because they're getting on the floor. Getting on the floor for 3 minutes doesn't mean anything. They need to actually be able to get on and put points on the board. So it's unfortunate. I do see what you mean, though. He's pretty good against Brisbane, and he was all right today. But I mean, to be fair, Tasmania got spanked by Adelaide. They don't look good at all.
No.
DJ did have a little bit of fun there. He had some very deep threes, few good heat checks. I was like, at least they're keeping it entertaining. But since I did just bring them up, let's just quickly talk about Adelaide. They've played Brisbane so far. They've played Tasmania just then. The Brisbane game I thought was a really good read. In reality, it was a good competitive game where I feel like both teams were trying to win. We saw a lot out of KD. That's Davis for reference. We saw a lot out of him, and as you said, he dropped 47 Supercoach points, looked very good in that game, and I know I was licking my lips looking at that. So he was a huge standout for Adelaide, and I think I'm not too sure with Adelaide. They don't have a double until round 3, so it is one of those things that starting them feels a bit more iffy. It feels like maybe just make a rotation to them after round 2 once we've seen actual real games have happened. But yeah, Davis is definitely the standout from there. Let's go with you, Boz. Anyone from Adelaide?
I think Adelaide's a big talking point, to be honest. I think as of recording a couple of hours ago, Jarrell Martin ruled out 4 to 6 weeks. So they're obviously a big forward import they've brought in and come off that patella rupture. But obviously this is a fresh injury, so I think it's a foot or ankle injury, something like that. So already you're thinking, oh, hey, well, who's going to take the 4 spot for the 4 to 6 weeks that he's out? And we've seen Lat Mayen kind of solidify himself in the starting lineup, and I think he puts out a nice little stat line. Like, man, I think last year at Cairns we saw that when he was given opportunity by Adam Ford, he did actually produce quite well. So I think in terms of kind of cash cows, and if you do need to start someone around that, because I think he's only about 117,000,
133.
133, I apologise. Definitely someone you could flick on your bench and be happy with having a couple of single games to start, and kind of hope that he produces that 15 to 20 Supercoach, per week. And that's the same for, Nick Marshall, who's coming off the bench, coming off a pretty impressive NBL 1 season, as well as Sunday Detch, who also looks like he is actually getting the starting nod at the 2-3 spot. So I think in terms of those lower priced guard forward options, Adelaide have got a few that I'm keen on.
Yeah, and they ran very tight last season, but you're right. Latme and Nick Marshall were actually someone, when I was watching the game a little bit earlier tonight, I was staring at intensely because I wanted to see how they go. They didn't quite light my world on fire, but unfortunately, fortunately, they're so cheap. They're so cheap that they don't have to light the world on fire. As you said, they can get the 15 Supercoach. What he's priced at 11 now. You're getting bang for your buck. You're very happy with that. But I personally really like Marshall, and he's looking so good, but he's unfortunately coming off the bench, and I don't know if he's going to get the minutes, but he's definitely one I really, really want to get the minutes. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, look, I tell you what I've seen of Kendrick Davis, I've just been so impressed of. Like, I just was like, holy crap! Like, round 3, you are coming into my side, brother. It was great. Exactly what Boz was saying, about this Gerald Martin injury. As soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, it's a little bit of a lottery. This one of these cheapies we're looking at, whether it's a cheapie guard or a cheapie forward, that we just need on the bench someone that is going to have a couple doubles at some point, whether or not you're picking, a Glover who's an SEM got a double in 2 or 3, or whether or not you're looking at like a Hickey from Illawarra who's around about that, who's got a double in 2. Like, we all need to find someone that's going to get a bit of opportunity there that we can just plug and play on the bench. And now that this injury is there, that does really start to get all of our minds ticking about whether or not one of these Adelaide pieces can be one of those pieces we can slot in. And this is the really hard thing when all of us are discussing and things, and we're producing content. Like, obviously I've put my team out, but as we all know now, over the next 9 days, like, news like this just totally changes the whole dynamic of everything you do. Because I've been really, really, really steadfast and focused that I was going to have Taron Armstrong on my bench to start the year. Like, I was just going to have him there for Cairns, ready to go for those doubles, because I just think he'll be their guy. But all of a sudden you go, okay, well, hold on. Let's hold the thing for a second. If we can get one of these Adelaide guys that is 100 grand, so it's 90K cheaper, with these injuries going on, it's going to get the minutes. They're going to make more cash, and then they're going to have the 3 or 4 double. Just do that, and then upgrade someone else on your court to someone else with a higher ceiling. So,
Yeah, no, very well said, and definitely something to consider. Like structure wise, fixture wise, it's a lot of things to take into account. I mean, I did mention chasing fixture is mainly a premium thing because, these rookies, we don't get a second chance to make money. It's not halfway through the season. You just get some rookie pop out of nowhere at 50K and you're like, hell yeah, they're going to make 100 grand. I need that. Like, it's not going to happen. Last year we were gifted with Armstrong and Bannon getting injured, coming in late, and they just made us a ton of money on downgrades. I don't think that's ever happening again. Definitely not happening this season for what I've seen. So we've got to get the rookies right early. So speaking of Armstrong, we will jump to Cairns next. They've actually got a very similar fixture to Adelaide, both singles and then 2 doubles in a row after that. So somebody that you could pivot to in round 3. You mentioned Armstrong before, someone that I'm also very interested in. Looks like he's playing good minutes and he's going to be the starting one. And that's always been Ford's thing. Taron's always going to run this team. Last year was sort of his first year getting into it, and we were always expecting bigger minutes this year. So definitely unders for what I think he will do. But as you said, there's so many viable cheap options. Is it worth paying 200K for maybe a guy that plays at a 250K mark? Making 50K on him, but could we get a guy that's 100K, 130K that's playing at a 200K mark, going to make more bang for your buck? It's a great question. But I think Taron's a good standout there. Their game against Melbourne, it was a first look at the imports. I did like this might be a funny thing to say, but I do like seeing players shoot the ball. It's sort of a Sobe thing that it's like when you pass halfway through a shot, you get a turnover. Just shoot it. We don't lose points for it. If you get a Hail Mary in, I'm cool with that. It's fine. Your coach might be a little unhappy, but I'm going to be happy. So, and I do think Bradshaw and Roberts, I'm pretty sure it's Roberts in the team, both of those guys love to shoot. Edwards, there we go. Sorry, Roberts was in their team last season. My bad. Edwards, those two, they look like they just love to shoot the ball. Looks like a shoot first mentality, which is really nice to see. They didn't put too many stats. I think Edwards didn't do too many other stats around the ground, but put the ball in the hole, and we're very happy with that, which is also a bit of a weird one because I feel like maybe affects Taran in a way, in a sense that Taran wants to get assists, and the amount of times I saw him pass out to someone who I thought was going to shoot and make the shot, but then they would take an extra 3 seconds, put on the floor, make a dribble, and it's like, okay, you got the score, but if you shoot the open shot and make the score, we also get Taran's +2. Yeah. Boz, start us off with Taipans. What are you seeing there?
So I have Tanner Groves. I like him.
Oh yeah,
big man. I've put on Twitter 2 or 3 times already. He's a double threat, and as we speak, he's got a double in tonight's game. So he's played the 28 minutes. He's just a big man who can rebound, a big man that puts his points up in the paint. He takes threes as well, so he does a bit of everything. He's kind of like what we wanted Wardenberg to be last year, but I think we found out very quickly that Wardenberg probably isn't actually a 5; he's more of a 4. But Groves is that traditional center that likes to get in there, grab all the boards, and the benefit is he can obviously shoot, so he can obviously flash out to the perimeter and cause a bit of mayhem for defenders. So I think Tanner Groves, he's actually a forward center as well. So we spoke before about having someone that we can kind of switch between our forward and center lines. Coming up to that double kind of game week in week 3 for Cairns is someone I'm really keen on seeing how he starts the season.
Yep. And I do agree. I mean, him starting at the 5 and Wardenberg at 4, it looked a lot better. It did look like Wardenberg's production was down, I think, but like when we talk about the guys on the field, like Groves was scoring the ball, doing a lot, getting rebounds. You had Armstrong at the 1, then we had Bradshaw and we had Edwards on the field. Like they were all generally doing stuff to the point that Wardenberg was kind of just a utility guy, wasn't getting the stats, wasn't really shooting the ball, which isn't unfortunately Supercoach friendly. We need guys that put it on the stat sheet, unfortunately. But Groves, I mean, walking double-double, that it's crazy how good that is. Even if they go a simple 10 and 10, which might not seem like much, you get the 5 points extra for the double-double. It's 25. That's already above the 277 input price without him doing anything else. So if people can, like, if a center can generally be a walking double-double, they're worth so much in this game.
Yeah.
Dave, anyone you want to highlight from Cairns?
Oh, look, I think that the beauty with these Cairns players we're talking about with Groves and Bradshaw is that they have that flexibility of that DPP status, which is just going to be so good for us when we start having to navigate, bringing in people and their doubles. And we have to remember Cairns, they do have that similar structure to Adelaide, but the advantage with the Cairns players is that they go double game week in 3, 4, and then 6. So they actually are probably better. Those premium pieces are probably better from a Cairns point of view because we will be able to hold them for that 6 double. And I say for what we've seen out of Groves and Bradshaw, like their assist numbers are great. Like in the game against United, Groves had 3 assists. Bradshaw had 4 assists. Groves had 3 steals. Bradshaw had a steal. They both had 8 rebounds. You've just mentioned tonight in this game, we've got, double doubles coming out. It's, it's great. Like I think that they're great pieces. And look, I do worry a little bit about what their influence will be and when that impact on Taran. I look at Taran. Taran didn't play in tonight's game, so that's obviously why there's a lot more ball handling. Taran hasn't played in the Kings game tonight. We know Coach Ford, how can I say this diplomatically? We know he was interesting last year with rotations. But he has said the whole off season that this this side was going to be Taron Armstrong's side. That's all he said. This is going to be Taron Armstrong's side. If he didn't go to the NBA, he's going to be Taron Armstrong's side. So I think ultimately Taron will play good minutes. He'll play a lot more minutes than he did last year. We know that he can do a bunch of different stuff with the ball. So I think at 193,000, I reckon he's someone that we're all probably going to need to look at. If we're not starting with him, we're definitely going to have him in round 3 because there'll be money on the table and there'll be solid scoring on the table for those rounds 3, 4, and 6.
Yep. And look, somebody I'm going to bring up that I'm a little bit upset about. It is Kieran Galloway. I was really hyped for him to go over the Cairns. He had a great stint at Adelaide last year. When I say stint, I mean like a very small stint. When he got the minutes, when Wiley was out of the team, he went bonkers. He scored massive numbers, and we're like, damn, if this guy can actually get into the team, get into the starting lineup, even if he's not the starting lineup, if he's the 6th man coming in with big minutes, he's going to be so impressive. And for what we've seen so far, unfortunately, he just didn't really do anything in that Melbourne game. He was pretty unders in that game. I don't have the stats in front of me for how the game's currently traveling, but look, he just a bit better. Well, that's always good to hear at least. But yeah, I was very underwhelmed with that. So I was a little bit disappointed with him there. The other one I think that's important is also AJ Gack in reality. He's also someone that's very cheap. And we saw it last year when he got that starting center and those minutes. He went massive. He had like a 40-point game in the single game. He went bananas. And so I think this year, for what we saw with Groves, it looks like those two are just intertwined, that Groves is coming off, Gack's coming on, which that's what we want. We want some stability in our minutes. We want to know what we're getting from our players. And I do think he's priced unders for what he can do. Unfortunately, it seems like we're saying that about every single one of these Cairns players. Somebody's going to get the Supercoach points, and that means others won't. And I guess we just got to figure out who those will be. But let's see, who have we got to finish off? So we do have New Zealand, but I think we'll just honestly skip them because they're just an irrelevant starting team. We'll talk about them when we get to week 5. Until then,
I just wanted to say one thing about them, right? And the only reason I'm bringing up, and what I'm doing right now, listeners, is I'm just bringing up the ownership of the New Zealand team, right now, as of right now. Okay. Now, there's obviously going to be people, we're hoping that are going to be new to the platform that'll be playing. And I know that there's going to be numerous people this season playing for the first time. I know that in my work competition, it's currently 12 people in it. The other 11 people didn't play last year. So I think that is, a perfect example of what the sort of growth we're going to see. People need to realize that in this format of the game, that all 10 players that you have in your squad score you points every week. So your bench only scores you 50%, but they are worth points. Okay. So anytime that you have people sitting there scoring a 0, they score a 0, right? That means you score a 0. So it means that other people who have their bench on, they're scoring points. We have to bring that up because New Zealand, and the reason why Verns is saying we're not going to discuss them, is that New Zealand have a bye in rounds 3 and 4. They're going overseas to play. Are they playing one NBA team? Yeah, it's an NBA team over there. They're going over to tour. Now, it's really, really important to realise that no one should have any New Zealand players to start the year. None. Because otherwise, you're going to have to trade them out for rounds 3 and 4, because otherwise you're going to score a donut. Okay, so you've got to get them rid of them. Now, we have to get the word out really, really quickly, because I'm looking at the ownership stats. We've got Jonah Bolden is owned by 7.1%. So 691 coaches own Jonah Bolden. Parker Jackson Cartwright at 421,000 is owned by 6.1% of the comp. Menenga 3.7, 3. Like, there are just, like, we have to get the word out to people. Just don't start with New Zealand players. Just don't. It'll cost you, it'll literally cost you a trade. And what happens if you want to make a pod? Let's say you want to make a pod move. You want to start with one of these New Zealand players because it's different. And then with the plan of trading him out in round 3, what happens if you cop 2 injuries in round 2? All of a sudden, you have no choice but to cop a 0. So it's well and truly, it's all good to have ideas and you think, I want to do this, I want to do this. But you have to understand that we know the one thing that we can. Someone told me something on my journey last year: control the controllables. when I was on my Supercoach journey, and that is really important because we can control that. We know that in rounds 3 and 4 these guys won't be playing, so we should just start a year with none of them.
Yep. And they don't even have like a round 2 double. They had a round 2 double. You get a bit of a price right out of them. Completely different story. Maybe there can be some justification, but as you mentioned, it's 2 singles. So you're going to have teams on round 2 that have double games and New Zealand just have one. So you're not even getting an advantage in that way. And then because of that, they're not having a price rise either until they come back from those buys in round 5. They play their 3rd game and they get a price rise. There's literally no reason to have them in your team. So yes, as Dave said, make sure if you've got them right now, get them on out, because captain loopholing isn't a thing in this game mode either. So now, since we're going to be skipping over them, we will jump to the Kings, who did play them in some preseason games. Absolutely decimated New Zealand. I do think New Zealand's also a very weak team on the inside game. They don't look tall. Gillespie just doesn't look like, I don't know. I think he's going to get bullied by a fair few bigs in this league. And yeah, not impressed with what New Zealand's bigs are doing at the moment. So, I mean, that's just a quick side note, because obviously Kings came in and played them, and we had both Cooks and I blanked on his name. Cam Oliver, just go mental on them. Both play very limited minutes and get insane super coach points on them. Obviously, we've had the game today with Cairns. I know I'm very excited to go watch that. Sydney, probably the second most important team when it comes to fixture, because they have a round 2 double, but then they have as many doubles as Cairns would have. So they have a double, single, double, single, double, I believe it is. But that's the second best amount of doubles in that period of time. And they have the round 2 price rise. So there's a lot of players in this team that are very interesting. They're so stacked. And I guess it's the only concern with some of these players is that there's so many good players in this team that they're all going to be stealing points off each other.
Correct.
Yep. But let's go to Boz. Who in Sydney is probably making the most impact for you?
Oh, it has to be Space Cam Oliver. I think he's priced so perfectly. I think there was a few people speaking of him coming back into the league thinking he might be priced in his Cairns days, so priced up into the 300,000s. We've been pretty blessed. He's 277, comes in with the standard import price. He's a forward centre, dual eligibility, and he's been going bananas. Now, Verns, am I allowed to spoil his stat line for tonight, or do you not want to know?
Oh, trust me, you want to know. You want to know.
It doesn't matter because I'm going to watch the game anyway. I'll just be mentally knowing what he did. What did he do? Tell me about it. I want to hear it.
Off the bench, may I add, in 25 minutes, he had 16-12, 5 assists, a steal and a block for 45 Supercoach points.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Woo.
Disgusting.
If anyone randomly saw my last Supercoach video, and you would have seen the little sneaky spoiler that I had the captaincy sitting on Oliver at the moment, that is why I have it sitting on him at the moment.
So I think just the nature of the Blitz games, his ownership's going to skyrocket even more. But I do think that's justified. I do think that the price, the dual eligibility, I read somewhere the plan is for him to come off the bench, which I find very interesting. But if he's still getting 25 plus minutes off the bench, just like Groves, he's a walking double-double. That's what he does. That's what he did in Cairns. It's what he's going to do in Sydney. And if you can fill the stat sheet getting a few assists and some steals and blocks, it's the biggest no-brainer. Probably even a bigger lock than Jack White, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, 45K more expensive than Jack White. But as you said, in reality, he's a 300K plus guy previously in this league, and we're getting him at a discounted price of 277. That's 24 Supercoach points he needs to be scoring. I mean, he almost doubled that in this game. So he is just a steal. I just can't believe that. And as you said, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if he's a starting player or not. It's about how many minutes did he play. 25 minutes, that's fine by me. If that's the kind of stat line he's putting out at 25, oof, I'd be very happy with that. Dave, what about you?
Like, Sydney, this roster's doing my head in, right? Because they're just so stacked. And one thing about tonight's game is, right, Adams didn't play. So that really takes the gloss of it. Or Tui, correct. So weirdly enough, and I don't know whether this is a good or a bad thing, but Space Cam played the most minutes out of. He came off the bench, but he played the most minutes out of anyone in tonight's game. So Cook's only played 19 minutes. Liafa 20 minutes, Qual 22 minutes, Galloway 22 minutes. Space Cam's now come out, and in both of those preseason games, he's played the most, like some of the highest minutes out of anyone. And I just go, okay, why are you out of everyone playing more? Are they trying to get minutes into your legs, or So again, in my team reveal, I haven't put any of the Sydney guys to start because I'm like, I need to know. I need to know like what you guys are all going to do together when you're there, and whether or not you're going to take. Like for instance, Cooks. I think Cooks himself, from what I've seen so far, and we haven't seen huge minutes, but I think Cooks is way overpriced at that 365 from what I've seen, because I think he's definitely going to be sharing with Space Cam, and if Cooks is only going to be playing that 20 minutes, he's definitely like he's going to struggle to hit that 365. And with Adams, like Adams was one of my favorite players from last year, but I go, okay, $392,000 as a starting thing. That is so much money for a guy that's going to have to compete with a bunch of guys who really like to hold the ball as much as he did, right? So that's why right at this stage, when I did that team build in my team reveal, I didn't have any of them because I wasn't sure. But the thing about Space Cam is that it doesn't matter what minutes he's played so far in these preseason games, he has gone bananas. Like his points and his rebounds have just been, like he's arguably been the most impressive. I'm just worried about why he's playing more minutes. Like in a lot of these blitz games, people who aren't like people who sort of are the non-starters and all sort of stuff generally play higher minutes, and then season comes, and that's what in the back of my head with Space Cam is there. I'm going, okay, so are they doing that because they don't want to overcook the other guys? So yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, definitely an interesting one, as you said. I mean, I think with Oliver's, though, as you also mentioned, he's just being so productive in these minutes. You'd think at minimum he's worth the price. Like at minimum, you're going to get for what you pay, and you're probably going to get overs, in my opinion. So for someone who has, as I mentioned, probably the second best fixture in the NBL, I don't see why you wouldn't be starting someone that's guaranteed. Like I feel like literally guaranteed. I feel I can get away with saying that, guaranteed to be at minimum worth what you're paying for. So I think that's why I'm very comfortable with him. He was originally the only Sydney player in my team, but I don't know. It's always hard when you see Sydney smashing breakers so hard and you see all these stat pads. So you're like, God, why are they going to be so good? But yeah, Sydney definitely a big talking point. I definitely want to see more of them. I definitely want to go see this game against Cairns. A little bit upset to hear Adams didn't play it, unfortunately, but still very interested in it. So I think we only got two more teams really left. We'll try and speed run a bit more through them because I'm sorry, we've wasted a lot of time, a little bit yammering on from my point of view. We'll go to Illawarra quickly. They also not a great fixture. They have one single, then a double, and then it just dries up after that. So we mentioned Hickey earlier. He was incredible in the NBL 1, very, very good, and he's looked pretty good in these preseason games too. But they do have a very, very bare schedule, so I don't want too many of these Illawarra guys in my team, and I only really want the guys that I think are going to make money. Aldridge being the other one who had a really good, as you mentioned, MVP of the NZ NBL, whatever they call it. He was very good over there. He had a really nice dunk over Hunter in their game against Sim, actually slammed it down on him. Even hit a three as well. He was a little bit cold at the start from three, but then put a three ball down, which speaks volumes to the game. Once the big man starts hitting a three, it opens up so much more pathways for them because you have to respect that. But they're probably the two I'm most interested in. Dave, we'll jump to you.
Look, Lockie Aldridge, man, seriously, they just got to give him the opportunity. He's got he's cost 121,000, DPP status, break even of 10. MVP of the New Zealand NBL, he averaged for the season, 40 Supercoach points for the season there. I think in the finals, I think he averaged like 44 Supercoach points. So he's young. but he clearly has the talent. Like he is clearly all that and more. They just need to give him some minutes. He's again shined in the preseason games. Did some really really nice things yesterday. Look, he's my biggest one. I've also got in my team reveal Sam Froling to start. I just I think he's got a really good ceiling. I really like him. I know that they've got that double, and I was basically going, okay, he's going to be my piece that I go right. Round one and the round two double game week, and then trade him out after that. But we'll wait and see. That's how I've structured it now. But base to start the year, I think Lockie Olbrich should really be 75% owned based on that.
Yep. Boz, what you feeling?
Yeah, look, I think the only knock on Aldridge, and he's 100% going to be starting on my bench, is the import they signed Days. Now, I know he came from Shanghai, a team they versed, I think, not long ago, and he actually played a really good game. And I think when the talks were that Illawarra were going to sign, can't remember the guy's name, but a lot of an older type NBA journeyman, you could kind of see that he probably was going to be that 10-minute punch off the bench, whereas this Days guy, I think he's got a bit more up his sleeve, so potentially takes a little or a few couple of minutes off of Aldridge. But come on, Aldridge has to start. I mean, he is playing incredible, straight from that New Zealand, effort in the NBL there. He just has to get the opportunity. I think Tatum sees that, and I think Tatum's rewarding him currently, showing how good he has been in the NBL, New Zealand League, and now in the preseason games, he's playing super well. So I think Aldridge is a no-brainer. Hickey, I like. I thought it showed a lot last year when he got the starting nod eventually at the end over Justin Robinson. So Justin Robinson went back and played as that sixth man. I think it showed kind of how Tatum rates Hickey. I know Trey Cal has come into Illawarra, and Trey Cal is very ball dominant, very great fantasy asset of that I had last year. He kind of got me to where I ended up, to be honest. But I don't see how Hickey as well doesn't become a really good cash generator for owners. Should be the sixth man, should be the only kind of backup guard coming off the bench there for the Hawks, and can see him getting, anywhere between 18, 22 minutes a night. I think that's enough for Hickey to produce at that low price of 105K, I think that he is.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely cheap as chips, which just makes it such a good pick. It just, once again, for the fixture, we don't care as much for these rookies. It just sucks that they have a bad fixture, Obviously gets much better at the end, but that's when we want the premiums, unfortunately. But yeah, I think they're probably the most important guys when we're looking at Illawarra. So we'll jump into the last team. It is Perth. First week of the season is going to be over in Perth. And I've heard a few people be like, you've got to have Bryce for that week one. Look, I hear you. I'm sure Bryce will go mental in week one. I'm sure if you put the captaincy on him, you get really good points. But then are you moving him on before round two? Is that the plan there? Yeah, there's nobody in Perth that has really piqued my interest because their fixture isn't very good either, unfortunately. I think the only thing I'm considering is a little bit of, do we start Cotton and then just move him straight out in week two? But then I don't want to put myself in a position that you mentioned previously with New Zealand, where you start him and then two other problems arise. And then it's like, well, now I've just got to hold Cotton for another single, which, I mean, isn't the end of the world. Cotton can easily put down big numbers to match those, but we can definitely get more production out of cheaper guys with a better fixture, in my opinion. Dave, how you feeling about Perth?
I just look. I actually think that they're going to have a cracking year this year. I know that they sort of tapered towards the end of last year, but I just like their setup this year. Look, from a super coach perspective, Bryce is who he is, but he is a very expensive asset, right? 448,000. If you start with him, right, you're going to have to, like, the rest of your side, your bench, right? You're probably going to have to find a couple of $69,000 rookies, right? And we've all probably going to start, well, many of us are going to start with Henschel, but I don't really think outside of that there's another relevant $69,000 rookie on the field. And you're right. Perth really don't have, apart from that round 3 double, they don't really have again, until round 6 or something. Round 6, maybe round 7. Round 7. So it's just 448,000, right? For someone that's only got one double game week in the first 6-7 rounds, it's a lot. Now, we know that Bryce has just popped off a 48 Supercoach point performance in the thing yesterday, but we also know that there was a couple of games last year, and everyone will remember it, where he knocked a 20. Now, if he hits a 20 at this price point, he is going to plummet cash, right? It reminds me of what happened with Mitch Creek last year. Mitch Creek started the year off at about 390,000, and he had a really poor first game. Now his next 2 games, right, were good, but because he had such a poor game, like he lost like $60,000 over the first sort of 4 to 5 weeks, and that's the last thing you want to do from your cash generation point of view, right? So for me, as much as I see the points and as much as I'm going to lose out on potentially a 40-point game, especially because they're playing the Phoenix, who I think are going to let them score whatever, I just think it's a high price point. So I'm not going to start with him. I am very, 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 very tempted to start with Pinder. I think that Pinder is going to have an absolute cracking year. Like I think he struggled moving into the Wildcats system last year. I think that he was an exceptional talent at Cairns leading into that. I think he just found it a little bit hard to get into the system. I think he is going to be I think he'll be in the top 3 of the top Supercoach scorers this year, Pinder. So
wow, so that's a big call. I mean, look, first game also going up against, as you mentioned, Sem, who we mentioned before, looked very weak inside as well. So I could see Pinder doing what he did last season, where he had a 50-point game. When he's on, he has, as you mentioned, we chase that ceiling. Like, it is up there. He can sometimes shoot the 3 ball. Sometimes he thinks he can, even when he can't. But he can usually shoot the 3 ball. He's great under the bucket. He loves to get a rebound. He does get a bit too fiery, in my opinion. Sometimes gets a bit too carried away and gets silly fouls. But no, he was really good at points last year if you had him at the right time. Unfortunately, when you had him at the wrong time, he was very, very frustrating. Yep. But yeah, I mean, as I sort of said with Bryce, like starting one of these Perth guys, you've basically just got to, in my opinion, you have to have what you think is a perfect team where you don't have a single trade that you need to make from round 1 to 2. Your team's set up perfectly for round 2. You don't need to make a trade. Obviously, we're in an unlimited trade format, so to a degree, you'd be wasting trades not using them. So unless you think you're in a situation where your team is that perfect that you can afford to start one of these higher end Perth guys and then make a trade off them on round 2, that's the only logic I see there. And with them being expensive, the positive there, as much as it sucks to pay up that much for them, it means you can go to anyone. Worst case scenario, you can go to anyone. You see Jalen Adams comes out with an amazing game 1 and you go, okay, you know what? I think he's going to work with this team. You can easily go cotton the Adams, get that game round 2 double game. So that is a consideration of mine. But Boz, what about you, Perth? Who's interesting you?
Well, to be honest, Pinder was the one I was going to chat about. So I think don't have to chat too much more about him, but I would like to discuss maybe the Henshaw and Pepper kind of debate. Not that there's probably much of a debate now that we've seen some blitz games.
I got to be honest. Anytime someone says Henshaw, I have such PTSD.
So do I. I can't believe how stoked I was last year round 1 when he versed Sem and dropped that 30-point, never to play again. It was just crazy, wasn't it? But look, I think Henshaw has actually kind of won that battle. Not that the blitz is a guarantee of what's going to happen in the real season, but I think we see that Henshaw's been getting those 18, 20 minutes and Pepper's been limited to those 8 to 10 minutes. So, I know that all reports from the preseason before the blitz was that Pepper was just shooting the lights out, and that got a few people excited to get him into their team. But I think as the weeks have gone on, or not the weeks, I mean, it's only been a week, but as the days have gone on, I think we've seen that Henshaw may have won that battle, but that's a battle in itself. Henshaw still has to win the battle of competing against, obviously, Cotton and Pinder, but you've got Windler, who they've just signed. You've still got Your Hiram Harris. You still got
Your Websters.
the Webster. That's what I was thinking of. Webster to compete with. So there's so many, not mouths to feed, but there's battles for positions at Perth. So look, we love Ben Henshaw. We like his game. He's so cheap, but is that opportunity going to come round one? That's the question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question because last year he burnt so many of us. This year there's been talk of an increased role for Henshaw, but there's one thing to say it, and there's another thing to actually do it. I sometimes think that these coaches know that us super coaches are sitting here listening and hanging off every word they say, and they're just dangling it there in front of us for a bit of fun. But just a side note on Pepper, what a ball of muscle. That guy is just an absolute tank. Those arms are insane. You don't see that on basketballers. I mean, if that guy's going to go play rugby or something, yeah, I could see him smashing someone, but do not see that on basketballers.
Yeah, he's super solid, isn't he?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, look, this was a bit of a roundabout way, I guess, to go through sort of the team review and player spotlight to a degree. Sort of just, I don't know, just had my own little take on it and how we're going to do that. But last thing I guess we'll sort of wrap up with is sort of strategy. Is there any specific strategy that I guess is standing out to you fellas? I know we sort of talked about it a little bit with that center, maybe wanting a DPP center there. I talked about how I have Lee there currently, but I'm going to be in a position where I position lock myself unless I trade Lee later on. That was a little bit of, I guess, talk there. As you mentioned, maybe these 69K guys, it's hard. This year, I don't think we have the cheap rookies that we had last year where we could afford to get like 3 69K guys and then pay up for these big dogs. I feel like we're lacking in those kind of guys. So you've got to pay up from the word go. You've got to get Zukowski maybe at this 95K. We're getting Armstrong maybe at the 200K, Glover at 110, where we're paying up that extra sort of 40K from what we did last year, which means there's a little bit less money to put on top of these premiums. So yeah, let's go to you, David.
Look, I think that I'm going to start with Henschel in the hope that they do just do the right thing and give him a few more minutes. I think that he's shown more than enough that he is a valuable asset to that team in playing those minutes. And you got to remember, like, his break even is 6 or 7. So we don't really need like that much, right? We don't need it that much. If he can be knocking out scores of 10, 11, 12 in those first few weeks, he's going to make us that little bit of money. And to be honest, I really, really think that we're going to need at least one player at that price point to help, offset some of the other things that we want to have in our team. So I'm hoping and praying that he is, especially because he's a DPP status as well, so that, we have the flexibility of flipping him up from the guard to forward position when we need to make the relevant trades. Look, outside of that, strategy-wise, I'm doing my best to have as much of the DPP stuff up in the top line. Now, I've mentioned that I've sort of got a bit of a plan in my head with Hunter, and Rocco Zukowski there, but I'm sort of offsetting that by going everyone, apart from Jack White, I'll probably have 3 DPPs up in that top, right? So that I can, move down to do it. So I'm doing that so that there's heaps of flexibility, that if injuries hit, I've got the ability to move people and be nimble. And, it means that way you're not locked into making a certain decision on things, because I might be able to move people down and around. Outside of that, obviously, just doing what I can strategy wise. We've mentioned it. Key strategy this year for anyone: just don't have New Zealand players. That's just you don't need them at all until round 5. So, if whatever you're saying with strategy, your first strategy, number 1 point, no New Zealand players to start with. And then I think we've touched on it a couple of times. Melbourne United, most relevant side, doubles in 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8 from memory. 2, 3,
Yep.
6, 7, 8. So
Sorry, 2,
basic
3, and then
2.
Oh no, that is right. Yeah,
3.
6, 7, 8.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no,
right.
you're right.
2, 3,
three,
and then
six,
miss,
seven.
2, 3, 6, 7, 8. So I really think that we probably need to have 3 to 4 of those pieces to start the year. Like with Cairns last year when they had that incredible run, I think you've got to have at least 3 of those pieces. I don't think it's wise to have 5 pieces, because sometimes it's then hard for those points to be spread around, and there's always other opportunities in teams, and then you'll find that when they're not on the doubles, there's too many that move out and stuff. So I, I don't think you should go as far as 5, but I really think that you have in your mind to start the year with 3 to 4, and then even once we hit that round 4, aim to have 2 to 3 for that next run, because there's going to be other teams that become very relevant in those round 6, 7, 8 that you can start sort of moving them onto. So that's just a very rough and very quick thing of the strategy that of putting around everything.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Boz, what about you? What have you got?
Yeah, so undoubtedly what DVG said, schedule is super important, guys. So just make sure you are checking that schedule, but also don't overload on schedule. You don't want it's great in theory to have all 10 of your players on a double game week, but if that means that in 2 weeks' time you're having to try and get out 8 of them, becomes impossible. Okay. And that's where I think some people have struggled in the past in terms of wasting boosts. Now, my strategy or my advice is to be real patient with your boosts. Target ideally times in the schedule where it's important to boost in players that do have, a good run of double game weeks coming up. But at the same time, be patient. There's so many times last year where I nearly pulled the trigger on my second last or last boost. But I held off and, it ended up working wonders for me because I was able to get Trey Cal and Isaac Humphries in from round 14, and they pretty much were the 2 highest scorers for the rest of the season. So, as much as it might pain you for one of your premiums to have a down game and you think, I'll just boost them out next week, it's really, really important that you kind of, hold your finger back and just really make sure you are wanting to actually use that boost in that round. So I think for me, strategic boosting is a really important thing. I know things like injuries come and you kind of are forced to boost. But if you have a team that is injury-free, if you have a team that is performing okay, don't feel like you just need to boost for the sake of it. Really try and plan out those boosts and spread them out throughout the season to hit those schedule spots that are going to allow you to jump up the ranks really quickly.
Yeah, very well said. Something we haven't talked about is boosts. And I did talk about it being unlimited trades. Technically, boosts are our limited resource. We only get 4 of them, and you got to choose to use them wisely. It's not like the other game modes where you're using them to upgrade your team. We're not really worried about using them for upgrade. We're sort of saving those for when a great fixture sort of comes along and you got to make that quick move. As you sort of talked about, obviously Melbourne having a great schedule until a period of time when it slows down. Obviously New Zealand off round 5, they get a really good schedule when they come back from the NBA games. And there's also the Perth schedule that like opens up really well as well. And sometimes you're in a situation where we're not going to have any New Zealand players before round 5. So if there's 3 must-have guys, like you to pull the trigger. You got to make the move for them. Saying that if they're not looking like the strongest team, if there's not these guys you need to jump on, then yeah, you can afford to hold back on those. But yeah, I do think another important thing there is probably trying to make sure with double game players, you don't need all 10 of them. I think the most important thing is you want at least the 5 starters on doubles. It's not always plausible. Sometimes you'll have teams that there's 1 week where only 2 teams are on the double. And it's just not plausible to have all 5 of those guys. But where you can, when we've got, these 6 teams on the double, we want to make sure we've got 5 guys on the court on the double sort of all the time. I think that's the most important thing that we can possibly do early in the season. So something you definitely got to factor in when you're picking these players. As I mentioned, an important reason why I don't want to position lock myself. Another reason why sometimes starting these rookies that have not the greatest schedule to make money, it could come back in a situation where you just don't have anyone on the double that week. Maybe it forces trades. I do think Melbourne were an important point. We're obviously going to have 2 weeks where they're going to be off the double, but then they have 3 double games after that. So they still have a really good fixture. You don't want to get off all of them at once. You're probably going to hold on to White, I reckon, over that period of time. I reckon he'll probably be the best Supercoach scorer from Melbourne. So he's super underpriced. He'll probably still be making money over that period of time. But then we can figure the rest out as we sort of go. But yeah, I think some really good key points that you guys mentioned there. So awesome. Great. Well, I think that's gonna basically be us done. So I guess what we'll do is we'll just go over any final things you guys want to say. Is there anything that you think I missed or that we didn't really cover, or how are we feeling?
Well, I think you could probably talk for another hour, but
Oh yeah, we definitely could.
time is what we don't have. So I guess,
Probably
I'm happy to wrap it
definitely
up here. And, just the boost kind of chat that I had, we could have spoken about that for an hour. You know what I mean? There's so many things you can talk about, but I think we covered a lot, unless DVG, you got other things you want to kind of talk about.
No, guys, I'm ready to wrap it there. We've gone for about an hour and a half now, and I actually have a feeling that some of the internets are starting to fail us across the three of us. So might be a sign that people are saying you gotta stop talking. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, look, I'm sure we'll have plenty of podcasts, probably at least another one before the season starts, if not two. So I'm sure that anything that we do think we missed, or if you have any questions for us, throw them in the comments below, and we'll make sure to try and cover those in the next installment. But we'll just quickly, I guess, go over the final things. Obviously, I'm Vern. You can find me at Vern Supercoach on YouTube or Verns_SC Hub on Twitter. DVG, where can we find you?
yep, you can find me at Twitter. My handle is at my name is DVG. If you search hashtag NBL Supercoach or hashtag Supercoach NBL, you'll see that I do a number of posts and have done each week now for the last sort of 5 to 6 weeks. So you'll be able to see any of my thoughts up there on that platform.
Awesome. And Boz, where can the listeners find you?
Yeah, two areas I kind of frequent at the moment. So on X/Twitter, SC_Boz, or if you want to sign up for the Supercoach Hub Discord, I'm frequently talking in the NBL section on that as well.
Yeah, awesome. As I said, a link for the Discord will be below, so make sure you jump in and join there. Obviously, just once again, appreciate all those that have stuck around to the end of the video, those that have liked and subscribed, and for those that have come ahead and joined our fundraiser. You'll be able to find that in the Discord or on the Supercoach Hub Twitter. So you'll be able to find any of the information you need there from that, which will once again all be in the links below.